The sun had just risen, its rays piercing through a thin layer of morning mist that stretched over the purple potato fields now in peak harvest. Ly tied her hair neatly, her hands moving swiftly as she pulled up each row of potatoes, soil clinging to her fingers. Yet her face glowed with an unusual radiance. This was James's farm, the place where she had slowly rebuilt her life, day by day. In the soft morning light, each potato was carefully lifted and arranged into the old bamboo basket she always used. Not long after, she brought the harvest down to the local hill market, a place buzzing with life but full of warmth and neighborly kindness. Sitting by the roadside, Diep displayed the potatoes in a woven basket and set up a small sign that read, "Purple potatoes, 10,000 to 15,000 VND/kg, homegrown, no chemicals." Her humble and sincere demeanor quickly drew the attention of passing customers. An elderly woman stopped and asked, "These are unusual, child. Why are they purple?" Diep smiled softly and explained, "These are grown in the mountains, where the soil is rich in nutrients. When boiled, they're softer and sweeter than regular potatoes." She wasn't a slick-talking vendor, but it was exactly that simplicity and honesty that made people like her. A few customers paid extra out of kindness, others stayed to chat and ask questions, slowly emptying her modest supply. Though the earnings were small, Diep was happy to meet kind-hearted people and earn a living with her own hands. Elsewhere at the headquarters of James's construction company, the office buzzed with activity. James and his younger brother, a calm, well-spoken man, sat across from each other, discussing plans for the company's TET bonus policy. "I think we should add 15% to the workers' bonuses this year," James said. "We didn't earn much profit, but keeping our people is more important." "And the new investments?" his brother asked. "Those two companies are small. One does dried fruit, the other's in construction, but their structure's still unclear." James paused in thought, then nodded decisively. "Let's invest 30 billion in both. You help with management, I'll handle the financing. Even if they're small, with the right direction, they'll grow. Supporting them is also giving this region a chance to change." Their conversation was quiet but resolute, revealing James's unwavering vision, not just to build wealth, but to create lasting value for the community. And while he sat in a polished office making decisions that would shape the future, he had no idea that in a small corner of the marketplace, the woman he loved was still sitting beside her basket of potatoes. Strong, resilient, quietly doing her part in the life they were building together. At noon, James's father arrived by car at Diep's house. The girl he had once ordered someone to follow. After stepping out, he walked alone down the narrow dirt path leading to her home. He stopped in front of the old wooden door and knocked gently. From inside, Diep stepped out, her hands still dusty from drying vegetables. Seeing a well-dressed but unfamiliar man who looked visibly tired from travel, she was a little startled. When he saw her, a sudden recognition sparked in his eyes. The young woman who had bravely retrieved his stolen bag from a thief days ago was standing right before him. "You're Diep, aren't you?" he asked, his gaze unreadable. "Yes, that's me. Are you looking for someone?" "I used to work for James's family a while back. I heard you lived here and thought I'd drop by to visit." Diep was a little surprised but didn't suspect anything. To her, anyone related to James was a welcome guest. Without waiting for him to say more, she invited him inside, poured him a glass of water, and quickly began preparing lunch. That afternoon's meal was simple: boiled eggs, tender green vegetables, and a small bowl of fish sauce with lime, garlic, and chili. But she laid everything out with care and respect. When she invited him to eat, he nodded without a word. The moment he picked up his chopsticks, he began eating like someone who hadn't had a homemade meal like this in years. The hot rice, the crisp greens, the savory eggs. Nothing fancy, but full of the comfort only a true home-cooked meal could bring. Diep watched him eat with mild surprise. "Please, feel at home. It's just country food, but clean and fresh." He nodded, slowing down as he chewed, his eyes distant in thought. Each bite wasn't just about flavor. It brought back memories of his youth, of the years when he was still poor and had lived in simple homes just like this one. "Don't you get scared living here all by yourself?" he asked, his voice softer. "I'm used to it. I have Haki to keep me company, and I'm trying my best to live honestly, without depending on anyone." At that moment, Haki, her little dog, lay at his feet, occasionally glancing up before resting its head against Diep's leg. That simple scene stirred something in him. His mind reminded him to judge this girl cautiously, to assess her carefully, but her eyes, honest and calm, made it difficult. He still hadn't revealed who he really was. In the warm glow of the firewood stove, he sat in silence and finished the meal, not just to fill his stomach, but because something about it felt deeply familiar. That meal didn't just satisfy his hunger, it stirred something in his heart, something warm, sincere, and quietly unsettling. After finishing the simple meal, he didn't leave right away, but the silence between them was merely the quiet before a storm of words that would shake everything. "The truth is, I'm not a former worker," he said, his voice low and firm. Diep turned sharply, her eyes wide, a mix of surprise and confusion flashing across her face. I'm James's father." It felt like lightning struck straight through her chest. Diep stood frozen, her hands clutching the edge of her shirt. She never imagined that the man who had just shared a humble meal with her would be the very person she had always feared facing. James's father rose to his feet, his gaze stern, each word slicing through the air like a cold blade. "I've seen all kinds of people in my life, and I can predict futures from the smallest details. You're a good girl, I don't deny that, but you're not right for my son." Diep tried to remain calm, but her throat tightened painfully. "I truly love James. Even though I'm poor and uneducated, I've never taken advantage of him. I've been learning to read, to write. I'm studying farming and trying to understand sales and business." "You've already had a husband," he cut her off coldly. "Even if it was forced, society only sees what's on the surface. Do you really think someone who's been through something like that can stand beside James, a man with an entire future in his hand?" Diep was stunned. Her eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling. All the effort she had made, the things she'd built from nothing, were dismissed in a single sentence because of a past she couldn't erase. "I hope you understand. If you really care about him, let him go." With that, he turned and walked away, not waiting for her reply. As his figure disappeared into the distance, Diep could no longer stay on her feet. She sank to the floor, tears falling silently. Not a scream, not a sob, just quiet drops of pain and heartbreak that rolled down her cheeks. Later that afternoon, James returned to see her, but Diep didn't come out. She quietly hid away, unable to let him see the raw, aching side of her that had been shattered by his father's words. James sat alone on the porch, his hand resting on Hackie's head. "Hackie, if you could speak, tell her I miss her so much." That night, Diep curled up with Hackie in her arms, whispering through the weight in her chest, her voice barely audible, every word wrapped in pain. "They say I'm not worthy, but I won't give up. Being poor isn't a crime, and I'll prove it." On a chilly morning, James was caught off guard by the sudden chime of the doorbell. As he stepped into the living room, he was met with the familiar figure of his father, someone he hadn't expected to return so soon. His father sat down on the sofa, his eyes scanning the tidy room bathed in warm sunlight. The atmosphere was slightly tense. James poured tea, trying to mask the surprise in his voice. "You came back unexpectedly. Is something wrong?" His father looked at him, his sharp gaze cutting through the silence, as if trying to read everything James wasn't saying. "Just wanted to visit, and maybe ask you a few things." He paused briefly, choosing his words carefully. "I heard you have a girlfriend. A girl from the Northern Highlands?" James froze for a second, but quickly regained his composure. He took a sip of tea and replied in a calm voice, "She's a good person, strong, honest, but this, I thought I'd talk to you about it later. Right now I'm focusing on work." Sensing his son's deflection, James's father didn't press further, though his calculating gaze made it clear he was connecting dots behind the silence. He nodded slowly and shifted the conversation to investments, setting aside the topic of Diep for now. Elsewhere, Diep was at home, tending her small garden behind the house and playing with Hackie. The memory of her encounter with James's father still lingered, but instead of letting it break her, she quietly reminded herself to be stronger. She stepped inside, opened a wooden box and counted her modest savings. After carefully setting aside 360,000 dong, she placed the money in a small cloth pouch and left the house. She knew what she was about to do wouldn't instantly change how others saw her, but at the very least, it would be a first step. At the early morning market, Diep stood in front of a small clothing stall. She hesitated for a long time before finally choosing a simple yet elegant outfit, one that wouldn't draw unwanted attention but still showed quiet confidence. Holding the new clothes in her hands, she smiled, not because she was happy to own something new, but because she had chosen to change, to rise above the judgment that once weighed her down. There was no bitterness in her heart now, only determination. If she couldn't earn respect through her background, then she would earn it through her efforts. Because this love was worth standing tall for. One quiet afternoon with no wind, Diep stood in front of a small tea house in town, holding the neatly folded outfit she had bought with her savings. Though slightly wrinkled from being wrapped in a cloth pouch, she carefully straightened each fold before stepping inside. Her eyes were steady, her palms damp with sweat. She was ready to face what she had to. James's father was already seated in the corner, posture straight, gaze fixed like a seasoned negotiator. When he saw her enter, he offered only a slight nod. Diep bowed politely and sat down across from him. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today," she began. He didn't respond, only lifted his cup of tea, clearly waiting for her to speak her piece. "I know I don't come from a wealthy family. I didn't have the chance to study much, and my past is far from perfect. But I love James with all my heart. I have never tried to use him or hurt his future in any way." She looked up, her eyes clear and unwavering. "I'm learning to read and write, to understand business, through the books he gave me." He raised an eyebrow slightly but remained silent. Diep continued, her voice lower. "James once told me that being poor isn't a crime. I believe that, and I also know you were once poor too. You built your life from the simplest beginnings." The room fell quiet. After a long pause, James's father set down his cup. "I won't deny you have determination, but you've been married before, even if it was forced. With James's position, he needs a wife with more than just good character. Someone who can walk beside him in his career, handle diplomacy, manage operations. Can you?" That question hit like a cold blade to the chest. Diep didn't respond, not because she had no answer, but because she knew nothing she said would matter to him in that moment. "I want you to walk away," he said firmly. "Don't let James sacrifice his future for a love built on emotion." Diep slowly stood up, bowed her head and walked out of the tea house without saying another word. Her emotions only broke loose when she returned home, but she didn't tell James anything. She only asked to be alone. James knew something was wrong. When one of the staff mentioned seeing Diep crying after the meeting, his heart sank, his expression darkened, his hands clenched into fists. That word rang out, short, sharp, but filled with fury. No one had to explain anything. James understood exactly what had happened. And for the first time, he decided he would stay silent no longer.
Đầy bất ngờ và dây dứt. Buổi sáng tại trang trại nhỏ, Diệp thức dậy sớm hơn thường lệ. Cô đứng bên khung cửa sổ cũ kỹ, nhìn ra khu vườn rau xanh mướt đầy dần nảy mầm, lòng chợt dần lên cảm giác bình yên hiếm hoi. Nhưng sự bình yên nhanh chóng bị xáo trộn khi cô nhìn thấy Giang, người đàn ông với nụ cười ấm áp đã làm trái tim cô rung động. Cô nhận ra mình yêu anh, không phải từ hôm qua mà từ rất lâu, có lẽ từ khoảnh khắc đứng trước cô, bảo vệ cô khỏi sự tàn nhẫn của bao những ngày, khi cảm giác ngọt ngào ấy len lỏi trong vào lòng. Nỗi tự ti lại trỗi dậy như một con sóng dữ. Mình là ai mà dám yêu anh ấy? Một người phụ nữ nghèo khổ, từng bị chồng bỏ rơi, không cha không mẹ, mình không xứng đáng. Cô tự nhủ, đôi mắt mờ đi vì những giọt nước mắt kìm nén. Diệp bước chân ra, đôi tay gầy guộc ôm lấy mình để xua đi cái lạnh của cơn gió sớm.